Okay, so good morning.
Good morning.
Kim and Damayanti, Anasuya, Christy, Viragovinda, Parampara, Malini, and then I saw someone else.
Ocean and Gajendra are here.
Ocean and Gajendra. And here it's afternoon, so we have Vadini, we have Martina and Vitek and Christina.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome. They're in Lisnese, Czechia. They're in Europe there. Okay.
So we're going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam. My understanding is it's third canto, chapter 5, text 39.
That's correct.
Okay, good. So it's Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 3, chapter 5, text 39. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nasta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtikri. So we'll do the Sanskrit first.
Okay.
Deva Uchu.
Deva Uchu.
Namamate Deva Padaravindam.
Namamate Deva Padaravindam.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Yanmuraketa Yatayogya Jasuru.
Yanmulaketa Yadayom Jasoru.
Samsara Dukam Bahiruk Utkshipanti.
Samsaradukam Bahirukshipanti.
Deva Uchu.
Deva Uchu.
Namamate Deva Pataravindam.
Namamate Deva Padaravindam.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Yanmulaketa Yatayon Chasuru.
Yanmulaketa Yatayom Jasoru.
Samsara Dukam Bahirut Kshipanti.
Samsaradukam Bahirukshipanti.
Deva Uchu.
Deva Uchu.
Namamate Deva Padaravinda.
Namamate Deva Padaravindam.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Yanmulaketa Yatayon Chasuru.
Yanmulaketa Yatayom Jasoru.
Samsara Dukam Bahirut Kshipanti.
Samsaradukam Bahirukshipanti.
Deva Uchu.
Deva Uchu.
Namamate Deva Padaravindam.
Namamate Deva Padaravindam.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Prapanata Pupashamata Patram.
Yanmulaketa Yatayon Chasuru.
Yanmulaketa Yatayon Chasuru.
Samsara dukam bahirukshipanti.
Samsara dukam bahirut kshipanti.
Deva uchu, deva uchu, namamate deva padaravindam, namamate deva padaravindam, prapanata pupasamatata patram, prapanata pupasamata patram, yang mulaketa yatayon jasoru, yang mulaketa yatayon jasoru, samsara dungam bahir uchipanti, samsara dungam bahir uchipanti.
Anyone else?
Deva Uchu.
Deva uchu,
Namamate Deva Padaravindam.
Namamate deva padaravindam.
Prapranatapo Pashamata Patram.
prapanata pupasamata patram,
Yanmula Keta Yatayon Jasaru.
yang mulaketa yatayon jasoru,
Samsara Dukam Bahir Ukshipanti.
samsara dukam bahir uchipanti.
Deva Uchu
Deva
Uchu,
Namamate Deva Padaravindam
Namamate
Deva
Padaravindam.
Papanata Pupashamata Patram
Prapanatapo Pashamata Patram.
Yan Mula Ketta Yatayon Jasoru
Yanmula Keta Yatayon Jasaru.
Samsara Dukam Bahir Uksipanti
Samsara Dukam Bahir Ukshipanti. Would anyone online like to recite the verse?
You put them on mute.
Ah.
You're on mute.
Okay, let's see here.
Like, yeah, Anandini, you're on mute.
Okay. Yeah, anyone online? So we'll do word for word. Deva Uchu.
Deva Uchu.
The demigod said,
the demigod said,
Namama,
Namama,
we offer our respectful obeisances.
we offer obeisances.
Te,
your
Deva,
Deva,
O Lord,
O Lord,
Padaravindam,
Paravindam.
lotus feet,
lotus feet,
Feet.
Prapanna,
Prapana,
surrendered,
surrender,
Tapa,
Tapa,
distress,
distress,
Upashama,
Upashama,
suppresses,
suppresses,
Atapatram,
Atapatram,
umbrella,
umbrella,
Yatmula Keta,
Yadmula Keta,
shelter of the lotus feet,
shelter of the lost feet,
Yataya,
Yataya,
great sages,
great sages,
Agyasa,
Anjasa,
totally, Uru, great,
great,
Samsara Dukam,
Samsara Dukam,
miseries of material existence,
miseries of material existence,
Bahi,
Bahi,
out, Utshipanti,
Utshipanti,
forcibly throw.
throw.
In translation, the demigod said, O Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. All the sages under that shelter throw off all material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There are many sages and saints who engage in trying to conquer rebirth and all other material miseries. But of all of them, those who take shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord can completely throw off all such miseries without difficulty. Others who are engaged in transcendental activities in different ways cannot do so. For them, it is very difficult. They may artificially think of becoming liberated without accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, but that is not possible. One is sure to fall again to material existence from such false liberation, even though one may have undergone severe penances and austerities. This is the opinion of the demigods, who are not only well versed in Vedic knowledge, but are also seers of the past, present, and future. The opinions of the demigods are valuable because the demigods are authorized to hold positions in the affairs of universal management. They are appointed by the Lord as his confidential servants. So I'll say some mantras to invoke auspiciousness and pray for that what I may share is aligned with the message that we're giving here. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajiva Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishvabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evaja Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurarani Prachate Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So the verse says, the demigod said, "O Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. All the sages under that shelter throw off all material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet." So when Dear Govinda asked whether someone would give class, we were not sure who will give class. And I said, well, I could share some of my experience because Ladini is taking me on Harinam, my first Harinam experiences. I said, I could share my experience. And then we said, okay, let's read the verse and then decide who will share. And then when we read the verse and we read about the umbrella and the shelter, it was kind of clear that I was going to give class. Because I will share more about it. why I felt okay, that's the place to share about my experience, my very fresh experience, and it's still continuing. So So here we have talks between Vidura and Maitreya. And the recent verses were about, we heard about like very far out descriptions of the material world and how it got manifested and different elements and false ego. And so here we hear the demigods, what the demigods say. And what they're saying is that a way to get out of material misery is to take shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna. And so I want to go into the purport and explain a few things. So first of all, we hear about the material miseries, and there's so many material miseries. Like maybe we can get them together, all the material context. So we have like birth, death, old age, and disease. That's given when we're in the human context. There's no way to avoid them. That's just going to happen. We're going to experience disturbance from the mind and from the body and from other living entities and the demigods, natural catastrophes. And then we have sleeping, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. We have to engage in these activities, and they cause problems. Like, and then we have, so as human beings, we have to make mistakes. We make mistakes. Our senses are limited. We tend to fall into illusion, and we have cheating. We have a propensity to cheat. So even if we don't want to cheat, we are going to cheat at some point. So that's like a summary of miseries. And then also what is often described, we also have anger, lust, and greed. That's also a cause of misery. Greed, lust, like desires. So we're always going to desire something. That's what the soul does. The soul desires to engage with God. In the material world, everything is twisted and we're confused, and our desire is directed towards things that gratify our senses, and we don't get fulfilled, we don't get happiness, or not real happiness. So as I was reading the purport, it says like the sages, there are sages, they endeavor to get free from these miseries, and I don't know much about their ways how to get free. I know there's some way to avoid eating. There's a technique to get nourishment just from sunlight. So I guess though they avoid a lot of digestion pains, misery coming from digestion. I don't know about, I guess there are like many yogic ways to avoid the miseries. And I was thinking, well, we also do that, even if we're not sages. We're trying even harder to avoid all these miseries. We don't want to get old. Actually, like I think the biggest, like there's different types of psychologies or states that lead people to turn to God, and one of them is suffering. So it seems like it's already like a big step to become aware. Oh, I am suffering. Like as we were going on Harinam in Prague, there's many tourists. It's the center of the town, and people are wandering around on holiday, looking at the attractions, and I don't know if they're aware of their misery, no, or whether they have like very strong habits to numb, to not experience. So Vitek is leaving. Okay. Yeah, I was actually I was speaking with Martina. She's here with the baby about being a mother and how we, as parents, want to save our children from suffering. And so we have a tendency to want them to be happy, and it creates so much suffering for the mother and also for the child, not like trying to avoid what for the mother. If I want my child to be happy all the time, okay, something is happening on this computer. I'm feeling a little distracted right now. Do you know what this is?
Internet doesn't work.
No, the internet is good. I could just close it.
We're hearing you fine, just so you're aware.
Okay, there's something else happening on the computer. I don't know. It's parenting and how we have a tendency, like we were speaking, how we grew up. Our parents didn't want us to suffer, and so anytime we were feeling angry or upset or frustrated or sad, it was like, no, don't feel that, like some distraction to feel happy again. And that's how all the society works. That's why there are so many tourists in Prague, because they don't want to be unhappy, so they distract themselves, they engage in something that creates some kind of happiness. And we were speaking about how it takes a special effort to not go into this pattern of whole society, to the children, that we like distract the children from their miserable feelings, but to really let them be angry, let them be sad, let them be bored when they are, and hold a safe space, a loving space for them in which they can experience all these emotions, all this misery or despair. And through that, we teach them and we support them to become strong, that then when they're adults, or as they're growing, they can tolerate suffering, they can tolerate uncomfortable feelings, and they may even not be uncomfortable. So that seems to be what's happening. It's for the sages and for us, or I can speak for myself, who's not a sage. I want to avoid misery and I want to avoid suffering. And it's an endeavor. I give a lot of energy to that, and it's not going to lead to the desired result. I'm never going to achieve. As long as I'm in the material world, I will experience some kind of misery and some kind of suffering. So what the demigods recommend or speak here or describe is the lotus feet of the Lord. And that's like an umbrella. It's like security, like when it's raining and I want to be dry, I want to be saved, protected from the rain. I go under the umbrella, and then it's still raining, but I am dry and I'm protected. So here we hear about the lotus feet of God, the lotus feet of Krishna, the lotus feet of the Lord, and that they are like this umbrella, they are a protection. And when we get under that protection, under that umbrella, we are protected from the miseries. So this is interesting, like, so at least for me. So I can take shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna, and I'm still in the material world, which is full of miseries that are unavoidable, and not suffer. So I wanted to look a little more into what are the lotus feet of the Lord. What does that actually mean? Because also in the 9 processes of devotional service that we hear from Prahlad Maharaj, he shares, it's one of the 9 processes. So we have Shravanam, that's hearing. Kirtanam, that's singing or speaking about the glories of the Lord. We have Vishnu Smaranam, that's remembering, remembering there's God and he's all loving and he's protecting. And then the fourth one is Pada Sevanam, which means serving the lotus feet of the Lord. And we have, we have more, we have four, so we have five more. We have Archanam, which is worshipping the deity. We have Vandanam, which is prayer. Dasyam comes first. Dasyam is the servant, so becoming the servant of God. And Sakyam is becoming a friend of God, like seeing God as our best friend and being his friend. And then we have Atmanivedanam, surrendering everything. So complete surrender unto God. So that's what Prahlad Maharaj, that's how he summarizes and describes that's devotional service. Any of these engagements are going to bring us closer or back to God. And Pada Sevanam, that's the lotus feet of the Lord. So what are the lotus feet of the Lord? What does that mean? So the place where we get shelter and where all the miseries are no longer having an effect on us. And I was having an experience. I'm going to share one example from the Harinam experience. So going on the streets and singing the Maha Mantra together with others, with Christina and Ladini and Yogeshwar and Priyasaki, who joined us. It was a really special experience for me to feel like, I when we started, I just felt like, okay, I get to participate in this Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan. I get to participate. It's not something I'm creating or something I'm like doing or achieving. I just get to dive into this Lord Chaitanya's movement. And was this in itself was a special experience. And I have the reason why I have not joined any Sankirtan, Harinam, and it's 17 years now that I started to chant and read about Bhakti Yoga. Christina here, she's totally into Harinam every day, fully inspired about it. It took me 17 years just to give myself the experience of Harinam Sankirtan. And the major reason is that I'm scared of what will others think of me, scared of disturbing others. And so that's like disturbance from my mind, disturbance from other living entities. And I feel really affected by that, like when someone gets upset with me or angry with me or something. It could be a stranger on the street. I get disturbed. And I wonder why is this happening and what? And I feel hurt or whatever. So it's a drama. And on this Harinam Sankirtan, my experience was like, I was actually surprised. I would say 95% of the people I looked at and connected with, they were like happy. They thought, wow, like there's singing, dancing, wow. They felt some joy, some happiness, some curiosity. And there was one person who came to me, like he came up to me and he was speaking in Czech, so I don't know what he said, but I got he's upset. He was angry and he was, speaking to me in a very fierce way. And I didn't feel affected. It didn't, I just noticed, he's upset. And I noticed like a short hesitance in me, like what's happening. And then I continued singing the holy names of God. And as I was reading this, I thought, oh, maybe that's what it means to take shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. It's not that the material miseries go away. They're still here. They're still here, yet I'm protected from the effects. I don't get disturbed. I don't fall into self-doubts or self-pity or whatever. It's just, I just notice and I'm not disturbed. So I'm experiencing the misery caused by my mind and by other living entities, yet I'm not experiencing any suffering. And yeah, I could actually, as I'm speaking, I can think of other examples, because it's really, walking through the city of Prague, and there's shops and there's fruit stalls on the streets, and so there's many things that I could get attracted to. And if I visit the town and I see these wonderful strawberries and they smell nice, I will want to go and buy them. Or an ice cream, or it just didn't come up for me. The only desire that came up, I saw this huge rat in the river, and I wanted to take a picture to send to my daughters. And I gave into that desire, and Christina took a picture of this of this animal. So yeah, but other than that, I could just notice, there are desires and things I could feel attracted to, and I could give into that attraction and go for them. Yet I was absorbed in something that's what was more fulfilling for me at that time. And then, the example of Queen Kunti came to my mind. So she's like fully taking shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna. That's her way of life. That's her consciousness. And she actually even prays for miseries to come into her life. But there's the verse from chapter 8 in first canto. It goes, Vipadashantu tatsasva tatra jagat guru bhavata darshanam yatsyat apunar bhavadarsanam. So she prays like, oh, please, Krishna, let these miseries come over me again and again and again, because then I get to see you. And seeing you means I will not see the repeated birth and death. So that's her prayer. And in the next prayer, in the next verse, which I don't know yet, I'm learning it. It doesn't come to my mind right now. She's actually saying that only those who are, who are tired of material miseries, they can turn to God with feeling. So she's kind, in a sense, glorifying the miseries of the material world, because that's what helps her turn to Krishna. Not just turn to Krishna, but to turn to him with feeling, with like true feeling and devotion. Yeah. And I didn't do the research, but that's what I have in my memory. That's the Sankirtan movement is sometimes also described as an umbrella. But like this, so we have this Kali Yuga happening now, this age where there's so much quarrel, so much envy and jealousy, and there's fight and war, and it's not like that all the time in the material world. But we are in a time where all of this is happening. And actually in Ladini and Yogeshwar's temple, in their Srimad Bhagavatam reading, we're in the first canto. Is it 12th chapter? I think it is. I don't know which chapter. And what I know is
I think it's 12.
Yes, it's chapter 12. We just read about. So we're hearing about King Parikshit, and thanks to Parikshit, we are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and and it's the time when Parikshit was born, and actually, well, King Parikshit, he. Okay, now I have too many things coming to my mind. So the place where we were reading is when just after King Parikshit was born, the sages come and they give blessings and they give predictions what kind of personality this little baby boy is. And they also predict that he will leave his body due to a curse by a Brahmin boy. And the curse is that a snake will come and bite him. And so we were just reading about that. And well, so Parikshit knew he was going to die in 7 days, and he decided, okay, let me use these last 7 days to understand what a dying person needs to know. And dying person, like that represents us. We're also dying. That's what we were speaking about today. Also, like all the messengers of God, of death, like gray hair or wrinkles, or it's not so easy to get up, or just all these signs of death coming. So that's also us. And for King Parikshit, it meant 7 days of full absorption, 24 hours, no eating, no drinking, no sleeping, just hearing about Krishna. And that's what we're supposed to do. That's good if we start earlier than 7 days before the time of death, at least for me. And also they predict that King Parikshit, he's going to okay, so why did I come to King Parikshit? Because of Kali Yuga. King Parikshit, as he was ruling the world, that's when the quality of the time changed, and the first signs of Kali Yuga started to come. So Kali Yuga means like deterioration. So things are just going to fall apart and get worse and worse and worse. Memory gets worse. Actually, anywhere. And when I look at like landscape, I know places where I went to as a child, which were just pure nature, and now it's all like built with houses or roads, or so. These are all signs of Kali Yuga. And the Sankirtan movement is like an umbrella. It's described as an umbrella. Sankirtan movement means chanting the holy names of God as a means to return to God, to come to spiritual consciousness. And that's what's the upside of Kali Yuga. It's easy to plug into God consciousness, easier than in other times. And it said that for 10,000 years, Lord Chaitanya created a movement that lasts for 10,000 years into Kali Yuga, where we can stand under this umbrella of the holy name, of the lotus feet of the Lord, and not suffer from the miseries of the material world, not suffer from the effects, not suffer because of anger, lust, and greed, not suffer because of the mind or the body or disturbances. It's not that they're not there. I think I don't have any information about that, but it's not that they're not there. They may not be there, but we're not suffering. Yes, so the lotus feet of the Lord, I want to go more into it because it's a curiosity I have since many years. What does that actually mean? And I want to read something from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 26. It's actually from the purport. So it's the verse Kama krodha vimuktanam yatinam yata chetasam apito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam, which translates into those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. And then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, and he mentions the lotus feet of the Lord. Of the saintly persons who are constantly engaged in striving towards salvation, one who is in Krishna consciousness is the best of all. The Bhagavatam 4:22-39 confirms this fact as follows. I'll read the translation. Just try to worship in devotional service Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even great sages are not able to control the forces of the senses as effectively as those who are engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep-grown desire for fruitive activities. In the conditioned soul, the desire to enjoy the fruitive results of work is so deep-rooted that it is very difficult, even for the great sages, to control such desires, despite great endeavors. A devotee of the Lord, constantly engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness, perfect in self-realization, very quickly attains liberation in the Supreme. Owing to his complete knowledge and self-realization, he always remains in trance. And then he gives an analogy. By vision, by meditation, and by touch, only do the fish, the tortoise, and the birds maintain their offspring. Similarly, do I also, O Padmaja. The fish brings up its offspring simply by looking at them. The tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. The eggs of the tortoise are laid on land, and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. Similarly, the devotee in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly, by engagement in Krishna consciousness. He does not feel the pangs of material miseries. This state of life is called Brahma Nirvana, or the absence of material miseries, due to being constantly immersed in the Supreme. So this really affected me to read it, and in different ways. One is that I give so much energy. I have given and still give so much energy, hopefully a little less now, into avoiding misery, not feeling any misery, trying to adjust my life, my consciousness, or whatever, not my consciousness, my approach. And when I read this, it's like it's clear, and this fresh experience from the Harinam, it's like lost energy, to give my energy to get the miseries out of the way somehow. Like it's like where to direct the energy is to take shelter in serving the lotus feet of the Lord, taking shelter in singing the holy names of God in devotional service, any of the 9 processes. That's well invested energy, and because that's the way to avoid the suffering. That's standing under the umbrella when it's storming and raining and hailing outside. And also the fact that it's taking shelter. It's not. That was my experience. The first time we went on Harinam, I was actually, after the Harinam, I had a lot of pain coming up, and I was wondering what's the pain about. And I came to the conclusion that during Harinam, I felt like, okay, I just get to participate, and I'm good enough as I am. There's no qualification needed. I don't need to achieve anything. I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to nothing. Just participate. Be show up. And the pain that came up later on was sadness about seeing myself, how I give myself, how I endeavor so much, how I put so much pressure to achieve something. And that's a cause of so much suffering. And we see here, like, and what's my understanding of this analogy with the fish and the tortoise? Yeah, it's like by meditation, by looking, just by showing up, and for me, participating in a Harinam was also, I'm showing up and to Lord Chaitanya. I'm here. I'm participating. I want to be part of your movement. And simply by doing that, I Krishna is Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada, they're looking at me. And that's then I achieve my goal of remembering Krishna, being in Krishna consciousness without needing to achieve anything. Yeah, I had another example, and I just noticed time passes really quickly. I think in Czech Republic time, time passes more quickly. So, yeah, maybe I will go back to it later. I have a text that describes the lotus feet of the Lord. I might read it later on. I just want to mention two more things. That the first and the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam are described as the lotus feet of the Lord, 1 foot, 2 feet of the Lord. And by studying them, we are serving the lotus feet of the Lord. And by speaking about them and trying to understand and realize what is written there. Okay, so I will not read this text now, maybe later. There's one last thing mentioned in the purport, is about the demigods. So Srila Prabhupada says, this is the opinion of the demigods, who are not only well versed in Vedic knowledge, but are also seers of the past, present, and future. The opinions of the demigods are valuable because the demigods are authorized to hold positions in the affairs of universal management. So when we say something, when we give a statement, it has more effect when we can like confirm it with a statement from an authorized person, a person who has more experience or knowledge. And so here, I was touched how Srila Prabhupada mentions the demigods and says, like they're saying that, so it has to be true because they know they have a bigger perspective than us. I sometimes imagine like they're looking down on us, like we can look down on ants, or my daughters have rabbits. So I can look into where the rabbits are, and I know what they will do. I know what the rabbits will do when I give them grass. They will all come and they will eat grass. So similar, and it's like, yeah, I can foresee the future, and that's what the demigods. That's how they see us, and they know what we will do. They will, because it's for them, it's obvious. I might think, oh, I don't know my future. I don't know what I will do next. The demigods, they have the bigger perspective, and they know the material conditioning, they know the machine well, so they know what's going to happen. And the demigods, what came to my mind is that Brahma, for example, who created the universe, he has, we were speaking about in Krishna book reading, like he's looking forward to seeing the pastimes with Krishna. Like he knows what's going to happen. And so he knows what's going to happen. And so similarly, all the demigods, they have seen human beings. They know the psychology of human beings, and they have experienced and witnessed many, many times that those who take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, they are going to be protected from the suffering of the material world. So Hare Krishna. I'm going to stop here. If there are any comments, questions. Maybe Ladini has something to add.
I'm appreciating your sharing, Anandini, for sure. And joining, I'm appreciating your joining. Like you shared, it was like such a blissful experience to just to like join. Like Lord Chaitanya's movement is constantly happening and you can just like join without like creating any like extra, over endeavor. So I appreciated that part of your sharing, especially that any moment it's available to plug into that like simple service of hearing and chanting, and then when we do it outside, it's already a great preaching. Like today, Martina came. Hare Krishna. And we just think like we went out on our yard and we did like, I don't know, little less than 1 hour kirtan. And then all the neighbors were hearing like there is someone like working on their yard and, and it just feels like why not to do just that. So yeah, the umbrella is always available. All we need to do is like get under that. And somehow I find it's easier. Today I connected a little with Anuk, Noah, and Paramatma. I asked them, how are you doing? And they were like, so. The quality of life decreased a little since mommy is gone. And I could see they were just eating. And I said, but you are eating. And they said, the quality of the eating also is down. And they asked, how are you, Ladini? I said, my quality of life increased because your mom is here. So anyway, it's somehow easier to get under the umbrella with others than alone, to make that very simple. It's not complicated, it's a simple decision, doesn't require much, but it's easier when mommy is here to do that. Hare Krishna. So I said that next time they can send mommy for longer, but they didn't seem convinced. So I don't know.
Well, they did say they will come too. So yeah, when you're saying that, thank you for sharing. I'm thinking, well, for some reason it's Sankirtan and not just Kirtan. It's together with others.
Congregational chanting of the holy name. Thank you for sharing your experience of going on Harinam. It's like the life and soul and the air and the breeze of the Bhakti movement. It's what Lord Chaitanya was doing. So if, it's like we cannot...
We are hardly hearing here. I don't know if others have the same problem.
I can come closer.
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
I was just repeating what Anandini says. Sankirtan is a congregational chanting of the holy name. And I was saying we cannot leave Govardhan Hill. We cannot go and dance with the gopis. We cannot, there's so many things, like Lord Krishna came to show us his eternal pastime. And then he left the planet, disappeared. And then, I forgot something. I forgot to tell them how to do it. And then he came back, and what he did is going in the streets of Navadvip and chanting Hare Krishna. So as soon as we go in the street of Navadvip is everywhere, is also Prague. Then we get to join in with Lord Chaitanya's movement, yeah. And I have a friend. She shared with me that for many years, like you and I, like I have the same thing about, question about the lotus feet of the Lord, and you did some research, and I appreciate that. And what does that mean? What does that mean? And she decided to take it literally, to really take it literally, and to just impregnate in our mind the lotus feet of Krishna deities. Can be any Krishna, and to really put it really strongly in her mind, and then she hold on to that. She hold on to that every time there's something happen in her life, every time she's not sure, every time she has something difficult happening, she just bring back that vision, or and just hold on to the lotus feet of the Lord, literally. Not trying to make anything. I know my brain have been trying to make something out of it, and then she have been sharing, for many years. I hear her sharing about, like the result of doing that, and how beneficial it is, and how she is always a shelter for her, always a shelter for her, and like the demigods, they are about to be engaged in their service. That's where they are at. They're about, and they feel overwhelmed. We are not qualified, like you were saying, I'm not qualified, or putting pressure on themselves, but they really felt that I'm not qualified. I really don't know how to do that job of whatever, taking care of the external, the gross material ingredients, because that's what Krishna gives them to do. And so they also probably have that ability to bring the lotus feet of Krishna to take shelter as they are about to do their jobs. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's actually, because of your sharing, I am going to read the text I looked up. I found about the lotus feet, because it seems like just what you're saying. It's a text spoken by Lord Shiva, and he describes the lotus feet of the Lord, not in, trying to just the lotus feet. So I will read it. It's from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, Text 52. And so Lord Shiva says, "My dear Lord, your two lotus feet are so beautiful that they appear like two blossoming petals of the lotus flower which grows during the autumn season. Indeed, the nails of your lotus feet emanate such a great effulgence that they immediately dissipate all the darkness in the heart of the conditioned soul. My dear Lord, kindly show me that form of yours which always dissipates all kinds of darkness in the heart of a devotee. My dear Lord, you are the supreme spiritual master of everyone. Therefore, all conditioned souls covered with the darkness of ignorance can be enlightened by you as the spiritual master." So he describes the lotus feet of the Lord, and then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada expands on it, and he also mentions that Lakshmi Devi, she's always serving the lotus feet of the Lord, and how it's described, she's massaging his feet. And to get a foot massage, I think it's one of the most wonderful experiences to get a foot massage. So it's very simple. She's just massaging his feet to give him pleasure. So
It's not doing any big thing.
no. Yeah, the consciousness is to give him pleasure. Yeah, and by engaging in the Sankirtan movement, we're giving Krishna pleasure.
Lord Chaitanya and Krishna. I see Gauda is hand raised.
Sorry?
I see Gauda. I don't know if you see that.
Yes. Thank you, Mother Malini. Garuda.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class, and really feel like fed. I feel like I really I feel like I really got a lot out of your class and really looking at like suffering, seeing how um, that that was my main motivation for like taking to this particular path or committing to any, I guess, spiritual path or making a commitment. I feel like my main motivation is suffering, and I could really see how um, it works for to some degree for individuals that maybe don't have a structure or some sort of guidelines to live by, and how religion and spirituality can really help them avoid a lot of extra suffering, like looking at like um, karma and understanding it, understanding how it works at a basic level can really help an individual avoid a lot of suffering in their life. So I was kind of looking at that, and then also looking at how, this idea that um, everything emits, like everything is coming from Krishna, like everything that we're experiencing is from Krishna. And like how changing the perspective, like for me, like changing my perspective of like um what is Krishna's gift in the suffering, like Queen Kuti's mood of like, please keep bringing the suffering, please bring the calamities, because I remember Krishna. I'm always remembering Krishna in that experience. And I'm just like looking at like my own life when I'm kind of like, sometimes I'm like, I see clearly like, okay, like what is the gift that Krishna has given me in this situation with my suffering? Like I'm experiencing suffering in a different way, but I don't always experience it that way. A lot of times I'm like, I feel, oh, I'm the victim. Why is this happening to me? Like I'm not seeing, like I'm not coming from a place of like, how is Krishna, why is Krishna giving this gift to me, and what do I have to learn from it? So I don't know, I was just kind of like wanted to share like how our perspective can change of what like suffering actually is, um if we know the source of the suffering. Anyway, so that's kind of what's coming up for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. What I'm understanding is that you're experiencing like a shift depending on your perspective. There's like suffering without, like suffering without any broader perspective. Then you just feel, you feel weak, you feel like the victim, you feel tortured. And it's a desperate experience. And when you bring in the bigger picture of like why are you suffering, and understanding the context and what like what brought you into this context, you come to a place of deeper responsibility, and then there's less suffering. You suffer less. It's like I hear that from Mother Malini. There's like there's suffering without purpose. I don't know how you say it, but in essence, there's like, so there's suffering is really painful, and it's really sad when there's no meaning to it, when there's no purpose.
Yeah, looking at like, avoiding suffering, like, like you were expressing for yourself, like wanting to try to, and I can relate to that as well, like wanting to conduct my life in a way that I'm avoiding as much suffering as possible, but then it's not possible ultimately to avoid all of it. So how do I relate to the suffering that is unavoidable, is kind of what I'm kind of looking at, with the having a bigger perspective of like what that suffering actually is for. And anyway, so thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I like this question. I can relate to this question. So about like how can I become strong enough to tolerate the suffering that is there? Yeah. So I don't need to go into numbing or avoiding or distracting.
Yeah, and just seeing Krishna or being in Krishna consciousness all the time, I guess, is like, how that happens. At least that's what I'm speculating.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Anandini. I'm moved by your class. Certainly, this is like a key theme in, in Vaishnava philosophy, Bhagavad Gita, that the material context, and they're right there at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Then there's Krishna just describes it. That's the devotional consciousness is noticing the disturbance and not being disturbed by it. Noticing the disturbance, not being disturbed by it. I'm not sure where they went. There we go. Tam's Titikshas Svabharata, happiness and distress, tolerate without being disturbed, and Samadukha Sukham Dhira, Somitat Vaya Kalpate. That and Krishna says that's the liberated consciousness. Material happiness and distress, and we continue steady with devotional service, just as Garuda Prabhu was indicating, and that's the liberated consciousness. And I appreciate very much your personal sharing, Anandini, about Harinam. Sometimes in these programs I've shared, in some of my very first Harinams, a particular one where someone who knew me was there in Tel Aviv, she was like enraged, and I got heavy disapproval. And so that was, so that's like the Harinam. I liked how you shared it. Just I'll speak first person, I have all these identities that I'm attached to. And then Harinam is just like a statement. I'm not any of that. I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, and that this is what Lord Chaitanya does. And so it's just, I appreciate your experiential serving, but it's just, and your vulnerable sharing that, unlike Bhaktin Christina, who's just like enthusiastic every day here in the first days of her Krishna consciousness out on Harinam. So you're like, after 17 years, I'll go, Jai, Hare Krishna.
Nah.
So, I too, I certainly should do the Harinam service more than I do. And then in the early days, 1987, I was temple president in Tel Aviv. I was on Harinam 6 days per week. And it wasn't easy for me. It wasn't easy for my ego going out in the street. I'm not like my psychophysical nature. This lifetime isn't like go out in the street and sing and dance like that. And so, but like I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya. So purifying to transform false material ego to understanding, to realizing who I really am. So thanks for your sharing.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, dear Govinda. I missed some of your sharing because I was suddenly kicked out of Zoom. I appreciate what I heard from you. And I did see like it is a very humbling experience to participate in Harinam, and I heard your story before, and of course I have many other worst case scenarios what could happen, and they were not gone. It's not that they were gone; they were still there, and yet I wasn't affected by them. I didn't even need to endeavor to give them no power. Just yeah, and there's something else I wanted to share which left my mind right now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
I'll make a little.
Gatindu? Krishna.
Yeah, just a little bit. I was actually going to ask you a lot of hard questions about.
I'm not hearing you well. Could you maybe move closer to the microphone?
I listened to the class. I missed a little bit of the discussion. Maybe somebody else asked you the hard questions of explaining Krishna's lotus feet while I was out. I would like to comment a little further. I appreciate, because I did hear what Garuda had brought up. And, you know, he used the word perspective. And part of my perspective, and I appreciate what he said about sort of not having the perspective of victim consciousness, but I feel like I have the perception more and more that when things do happen, the different types of adhidaivics, adhibhotics, adhyatmics, super hot weather, all these things that I'm subject to, and even personalities like Srila Prabhupada are still, you know, being a pure devotee doesn't mean you are somehow not subject to the externals of the material suffering. But yeah, it's where we go with our understanding and perspective. And so I look at my own sense, my own experience when I try to look more carefully and not go into victim consciousness, is that a lot of times things happen to me in my life, whether it could be anything from a physical injury to some relationship or emotional disappointment that may cause some type of grosser or more mental type of suffering. But I more and more, I don't feel that these are anything being done to me at all, to where it would be about victim consciousness. But I really feel it's, in one sense, a request that's being fulfilled from the deepest purity of my soul, myself, that is wanting to serve Krishna purely and to be free from any material covering and contamination. That it's really, things happen to me because I asked for them to happen to me. Maybe not consciously, but it's the real me is asking for these things to happen. I'm not a victim at all. It's actually Krishna answering my prayers to become purified and engage in his service. And I'm just becoming more conscious that that's what's happening. Things aren't being done to me. My free will's not being violated. I'm actually, it's just the request of the true me being fulfilled to help me. Because what happens when I face these things, you know, when I subtove like, you know, accept what's happening and embrace things, yeah, that's where they're the blessings. That's where they're really, so much of my progress, my own spiritual evolution happens. And beyond that, like with Queen Kunti, I mean, there's all, you know, there's just all different moods. I doubt her life was this like total misery and affliction or calamity, but there's just gonna be stuff in this world. And
Yeah.
we're to see Krishna and serve Krishna no matter what's happening. And that's the transcendental state. That's the, yeah.
Thank you, Gajendra. Like when you speak, I'm thinking of, yeah, that's my understanding of 100% responsibility. Like to see that the miseries in this life, they're not random. Like it's not that they just happen. Like when you take this stand of, this is all happening for me to purify my heart and to come to a place of truly and honestly and completely surrendering to Krishna, to the lotus feet of Krishna. It's all, then it becomes like all of that is also like a lovingly directed by Krishna to fulfill that desire of purification.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's what it is. It's about that 100% responsibility in a really intimate way, not like, oh, this thing's happening to me to make the best life, but like really, really taking, I mean, like nothing in between, taking that responsibility.
Yeah, it's like full clarity. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Mm.
Yesterday I read a purport in the ninth canto, and Srila Prabhupada gives a translation to the word Maya as compassion.
Wow.
Wow.
He gave two translations. One, I don't remember exactly the word, but like, material suffering, and then the second one is compassion.
Thank you. Garuda, do you still have your hand raised or again?
Yes, we're going to do Harinam tomorrow morning at Hale Plantation. If anybody wants to join us, that would be great. Damayanti and Mother Malini and I will be there. I'm not sure of the time. Mother Malini, do you know what time we're going?
We are meeting at my place at 8:15 for those who want to ride with us. Otherwise, that means like we'll be there before 9. Yeah.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
It's a
But
really nice place because it looks like Europe, and it's a plaza, and there is a farmer market next to it. It's kind of, we'll see. Last time we were there at the farmer market, they kicked us out. So now we are trying the plaza outside of the market, and we will see. See what will happen.
when I arrived here on Monday evening, Yogeshwar picked me up from the station and he said, "So what's your intention for your stay here?" And I said, I want to connect with the life of Bhakti Yoga. I want to connect with the life of Lord Chaitanya's movement. And yeah, like by going on Harinam, I feel like I'm moving closer to that, to really connect with the life of it. So you will be engaged in that, and we will go again on Sunday before I go back home to Switzerland.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thank you. I will read the text again. You wanted to say something, Malini?
Saying like Prague is such a great place to do Harinam. With all the people in the streets. Europe in general, You're very fortunate. I'm lamenting here.
The demigod said, "Oh Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. All the sages under that shelter throw off all material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet." Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.